Monique, for our viewers who aren't familiar with diabetes, can you pull back the covers and explain what diabetes is and share some of your personal experiences as a diabetic patient?
Type 1, you basically stop producing insulin. So you have to go on insulin injections. There is no pill for it. You can't just diet and exercise and keep it at bay. It just is insulin, that's it. Type 2 is a little different. Some people are fortunate enough they catch it early and they can adjust their diet, exercise, possibly lose weight if that's a factor for them, and they'll be able to control it. Not always though. Often people need pills or injectables, and often it progresses to the point of needing insulin as well. But they are very different types of diabetes. So type 1, your pancreas stops producing insulin. Essentially, there's more to it than that, but it stops producing. Whereas type 2, your body's still producing insulin, but maybe not enough, or your body can't utilize it well enough anymore. So then that's where the medications come in to try to help you produce more or use what you have more effectively.
Monique, can you share with us some of the experiences that you went through living with diabetes during your teen years? Are there any experiences that really stand out to you?
Some of the things that really would stand out in a negative light were being started on an insulin, being a teenager and not wanting to let anyone know that I'm doing insulin. So I gave a dose of it, went out, we were gonna go eat food, but we delayed, and so my insulin started working before we ate food, and I passed out and had a seizure in the middle of a store, and that spent my evening at the hospital. So things like that I was very fortunate I had good supports as a teenager, because you know you're invincible at some point. You think nothing will happen to you. So yeah, there was things like that. I've been fortunate I haven't really had any DKA or ketoacidosis that's put me in hospital, where a lot of diabetics do. There's been, over the years, it's sort of morphed and changed. When I was younger, I wasn't shy about it. I was very open about it. I always knew I wanted to get into healthcare too, so I was always very interested in the topic. But I also realized more recently that I kind of did myself and everyone a disservice by not talking about it. I was open about it, but I always brushed it off as like, no, I'm fine. And because I didn't want people commenting on what I was eating. I didn't want people commenting on what I was doing, like, oh, well, can you eat that? Can you do that? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. So I brushed it off a lot and tried to pretend like I could do anything anyone else could. And for most things, I absolutely can. But there were times where I pushed through events where I shouldn't have and allowed myself to get too low or get in a position where I may not have been safe because I didn't want to admit that I needed time to rest or things like that. So I've learned now as time's gone on that it's better to give a realistic picture of what it is for people so that people know that it is an all-day, everyday problem. I downplayed it a lot for many years for many reasons, but I've now realized that it also minimized the work and the burden that it actually can be on a regular basis. So just been trying to be more open about it.
Yes, it's so important to have those conversations. Monique, you touched on something a little bit earlier when we talked about your support systems and being diagnosed at 13. That would have primarily been your parents and your family. It must have been a huge learning curve for them as well.
Yeah, I think I recognize it a lot more now, and I've thanked my mom so many times as an adult, but as a kid they are just like, stop bugging me. No, I don't have a headache because my blood sugar. It's like, just leave me alone. It's my toe hurts. It's fine. It's not my blood sugar. Stop asking me to check, or don't wake me up in the night to poke my finger, or, you know, it was such a nuisance at the time. But looking back, if I didn't have her, especially living in such a small town where there was no other resources, she did the research, and this was before the internet, before there was CGMs like Dexcom and Libre, before the technology, and so she was really spent the time reading the pamphlets that I tossed to the side, reading the books that I tossed to the side, watching the videos, and you know, I'm sure her stress levels were a lot higher than she imagined they'd be already raising a teenager. Yeah, I think my mom was definitely the biggest support in all of that. My whole family was, but she was the one who took the brunt of it.
So speaking of that, the changes that you had to make, what overall lifestyle changes have you sort of made over the years? If you can touch on some of those, to adapt to having, diabetes.
They've changed again, as always, and knowledge has changed over the years too. So lifestyle changes mainly are trying to increase activity, which we all know that activity and exercise is helpful, but it's not always so easy to incorporate, especially when you get busy and raising kids and working and all that. It gets very tricky to fit everything in, but yeah, trying to park a little further, walk a little bit more at work, add in some exercise where I can, trying to be more mindful and aware of what I eat and when I eat it, because having something higher carb at a different time of day will affect me a lot more than another. So I tend to be more insulin resistant at different times of the day. So going for a walk and having a small meal in the morning works really well for me. Whereas if I go for a walk in the evening and have that same meal, I will get lows unless I adjust insulin. So it's been a learning curve for a lot of reasons. It took me a while to get to the point where I was comfortable exercising too, because if you don't adjust properly, you get lows. I know there's a lot of diabetics I've talked to where the fear of hypoglycemia or low blood sugars is so real that people avoid scenarios that will cause low blood sugars. So exercise or taking medications or higher doses of medications, which are actually needed, but that fear of lows, because it's such a powerless feeling where you can lose consciousness, have seizures like I said I did as a teenager. It's a constant balancing act.
It's got to be challenging at times.
It is, yeah. And there's the stress of the illness itself, and then there's all the added things of life, right? There's hormone changes, there's raising kids, there's working, there's having fun, there's just all the normal parts of life. And then you factor in all that extra stuff you have to think of. Because I don't just get in my car and go. I don't just go out for a meal. I don't just go out for a walk. I have a big bag with me everywhere I go. I always have sugar on me. I always have extra pump supplies for my insulin pump, because what if it fails? And it has failed. Well, I'm out for dinner with family and suddenly I'm sitting there and I have no way to give myself insulin had I not had that extra kit with me. You don't just get up and go and do things like the people around you. So when someone says, oh, why don't we just run out here and we'll go to the park, or we'll go to whatever it is that, just run around and do something extra. It's like, I'll get low walking around Costco if I don't adjust first. I have to plan like an hour in advance to make sure that I don't get low in Costco. My first ever low was in Costco when I was a kid. I've had multiple since. It's the weirdest thing, but it's just a lot more walking than you think. And if you don't plan ahead for it, if your blood sugars are good, it can tip very quickly.